Morning, everyone, and welcome to this panel discussion, which is around the technologies surrounding the data center infrastructure. I am Innocent Murthy. I am partner with PwC, driving the various government initiatives within the firm. And along with me on the panel, there are people who have actually spent tons of years of experience and learnings on data center and technologies surrounding making the data centers more efficient, more intelligent. Actually, I would like to say that. So we'll start with kickoff, and while I'll do the introductions of everyone, once we start the panel, I'll request my friend and colleague from Brocade, Casamento, who's the principal research and development engineer, to start with. He wants to actually do a presentation which will give a view into the new technologies of how the data center can be technologies can be driven. Casamento, all yours. You have about 8 minutes to actually give this brief.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. And let me just bring up the presentation really quickly. So thank you very much. And let's just have a quick conversation around the concept that one of the major changes for data centers across the world that we're seeing is that Moore's Law now applies to external storage. This is something we've been very much accustomed to in terms of CPUs, servers, and so on. This concept that on an 18 to 24 month cycle, the density of transistors will double. But now with the concept of flash storage, non-volatile memory express, persistent memory, storage class memory, we're now in a scenario where the same rule now begins to apply to external storage, and that has started to shift bottlenecks again, right? So this is something that for 40 plus years actually, now that I've been doing this, has been true. We've moved bottlenecks from server to interconnect in the servers, to the network itself, to the size, capacity, of the storage of the memory, and back around again. And one of the conversations that people are beginning to have is, how do we hit this balance? How do we then set infrastructures that people can readily add the next generations of technologies into without having any challenges or limiting the number of challenges that they're having, because the interconnects in the servers are moving continually faster, as are the memory systems themselves. And so one of the things that's come along is this concept of non-volatile memory express. This is something that is both a hardware component as well as a new language for speaking to software, to memory. This is a pretty significant change for us. It's the first time in 30 years that there's been a shift in the language that we use to talk to storage. What it's doing for the applications, the possibility for the applications, and so on, this is something that we're going to continue to see moving forward. But it grants a significant performance impact. One of the things that we're looking at in these environments, and one of the reasons why Fibre Channel as a platform for us has been driven so hard, is that Fibre Channel is an infrastructure that's in data centers today that can readily take or already carry non-volatile memory express traffic, and so it's a very dependable, very reliable, lossless, low latency, deterministic delivery of storage traffic internal to a data center. And there are technologies coming that are going to build over time. Absolutely true. It's my firm expectation that non-volatile memory express over TCP will eventually replace iSCSI, as an example, as the interconnect around okay enough performance at an okay enough price, but there's going to be a development of services that's going to take quite some period of time. One of the things we're going to talk a little bit about today is the autonomous SAN, this concept of a self-learning, self-optimizing, and self-healing environment. From a technology standpoint, if you look at where most data center environments are today, and you look at the performance of the applications that are involved, the scale and scope of the applications that are involved, it's almost impossible for humans to be fast enough any longer. With the concept of a network operations center with, tens of people staring at screens waiting for something to break, if the first time you begin to look for data around a problem or around an environment is after the problem's already occurred, then arguably you're already behind the curve. You're already behind the line on this. And so this is something that we're going to continue to drive very, very hard. And part of the premise behind this is this concept that we're going to auto-learn the environments. And so without configuration, literally we are going to be learning thousands of flows, 20,000 flows per platform initially, to build this baseline for the customer's environment. And the idea there is, if you don't know what the baseline is, if you don't know what your network normally looks like, if you don't know what your storage environments, as an example, look like under normal circumstances, how do you know the magnitude of any issue that occurs? How do you rapidly get to a root cause analysis, right? And so by having this baseline, by doing this in the platforms and doing it in the hardware in particular, that's one of the things that we've built in that allows us to do this monitoring with no impact for the measurement itself. So, you can do stateful inspection in other technologies, but observation has an impact. It has a performance impact in there. And one of the concepts for us in doing this in hardware and driving this into monitoring in real time and streaming through Kafka out to analytics platforms is that you don't pay that penalty. And so we're able to measure latency on every port in the network, as an example, hundreds of thousands of times a second. And that allows us to more readily do that root cause analysis. And so there are technologies that we'll talk a little bit more about involved in our latest generations of platforms. But I would make the argument that this ability to learn automatically, the ability to optimize traffic automatically in and I'll say a hybrid environment, in the sense that it's very much a mix of generations of technologies from the server and storage standpoint. This level of automation is something that's going to matter to people a great deal, as will the security of these environments, because very clearly, the hackers are just getting smarter. And so I think I'm going to close out there and turn back to the moderator. It's Mr. Marty.
Can we have everyone? Yeah. Thanks. It's really great insights, and I think it's a good input to start the entire discussion and panel discussion, because data is today becoming extremely important, and the way in which we are handling data, the enormous amount of data which is coming, and we don't know which one is useful for us, how much time we have to retain it, from where do we need to get the insights, how do we want to actually plan it, what are the use cases. So the questions are several questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce the panel, and there are and then I'll ask each one of you a small question which is more targeted towards introduction, and then probably we'll ask you a couple of other questions which are around the technology and the way in which you are handling your data and the security and the storage. So with us we have Ms. Kabita Roy Das. She is DDG and CIO for Odisha, SIO for Odisha NIC. Welcome, ma'am. And I know Odisha is doing a lot of innovative work, and we would like to hear more from you. We also have Mr. KP Mohidekar. He's from ONGC, and he has been driving a lot of technology initiative in the PSU, which is doing a lot of great work. We also have Raghav. Raghav is from IBM, and we hear from IBM. There are a lot of changes going on in IBM, Raghav, and while we don't want you to actually elaborate on that, but we definitely want to know how the technology innovation, as IBM has always been always in the forefront, how it's changing the lives of people who are managing data center infrastructure. And we already heard from Casamento, who's from Brocade, And thank you for a very interesting presentation. I have several questions around that. I'll ask you in between. So I'll kickstart this with a very small pointer. Uh, I think we are building the pandemic has brought forward to one important, at least one thing, that we are all going to live in this kind of a virtual environment, talking to each other and having all these conversations. So there are multiple things that are actually driving the amount of data which is getting stored, and people are trying. There are two sets of people. The one set of people is trying to actually enable a lot of data to be stored, so because they're aggregating data so that they can create insights later. The second set of people, or the users, they're actually trying to see how can I manage the inflow and the storage of this data, so only to use it meaningful for my company. So there are two sets of people, and I know at this moment, and I'm going to, from a government standpoint, it's a large data. From a PSU and the company standpoint, it's a very focused data management. So these are the two broad base, because government doesn't know what data will get used at what time. So it's important to have a different SOP. So I'll come straight to ma'am. You how's the entire success of this data management lies in what kind of insights you create. So how's your team managing that? Can you actually give us some example, give us some perspective views on how Odisha is doing it? Ma'am, you're on a mute.
Yes. Yes. Good morning to all. Thank you, Sri Murthy. It is my pleasure to be invited as a panelist here. Yes, government collects, processes, and generates a large amount of data in its day-to-day functioning nowadays. So, department which generates data is the owner and custodian of data. So, government institutions interact with citizens, business units, and other government bodies through various G2C, G2G, and G2B applications. Based on this data, can be categorized by critically confidential, moderately confidential data, which are public in nature but generated through government applications, and data which is public in nature but not generated through government applications. For these four categories of data, we should have four different strategies to deal with. So we have strategies for storing the data in fully controlled government data centers, private cloud but server co-located in government data centers, private cloud having several servers besides the geographical boundaries of India, and private cloud servers located beyond boundaries but legally bound to the policies of government. Our department, that is NIC, is mostly responsible for the first two categories of data storage, and for which we have four national data centers in Delhi, Hyderabad, Pune, and Bhubaneswar to deal with. Huge ICT infrastructure is required to store the data in a secured environment. At national data centers, enterprise-level storage systems with high availability are used to store this data. These national data centers are geographically scattered and logically linked. We take care of security, data recovery, availability, and scaling of these data centers, as well as we provide technical leadership to state-run data centers known as SDC in many states to augment the IT capacity. NDC Bhubaneswar, in addition to giving services to the entire eastern region of India, also hosts a major share of applications of Odisha. Efficient sharing of data among data owners and intra-governmental agencies, along with data standards and interoperable systems, is the need of the hour. Now we are facing another new challenge. Due to increased interoperability in the last decade, there are certain scenarios where web APIs are not audited properly, due to which two secured applications are communicating with each other using APIs over an unprotected interface. This need to be addressed with proper security audit of the APIs. Hence, the National Data Sharing and Accessibility Policy is designed so as to apply to all shareable non-sensitive data available either in digital or analog forms, but generated using public funds by various ministries, departments, subordinate subordinate offices, organizations, agencies of Government of India, as well as states. Data centers are often referred to as a singular thing, but in actually they are composed of a number of technical elements. This can be broken down into three categories. This is compute, which is provided by high-end servers, then storage, generally housed in a data center on media ranging from tape to solid-state drives with multiple backups, and networking, which have components like including routers, switches, application delivery controllers, and more. These are the components that IT needs to store and manage the most critical resources that are vital to the continuous operations of an organization. New workloads such as analytics, machine learning, and IoT are driving the need for a new type of compute model that exceeds what CPUs can do. This graphics processing unit, that is GPUs, once only used for games, operate fundamentally different as they are able to process many threads in parallel. Data centers have always been critical to the success of businesses of almost all sizes and that own SIMs. However, the number of ways to deploy a data center and the enabling technologies are undergoing a radical shift to help build a roadmap to the future data center. Recall that the world is becoming increasingly dynamic and distributed. Technologies that accelerate that shift are the ones that will be needed in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kabita. That's very interesting. So I'll come straight to Mr. Mohidekar. Similar to government, but a little bit of a difference in the PSUs. You are a multi-location, multi-application business. Okay, so and there is a PNL which is there. There's a user departments who have actually a lot of requirements from you. So how are you actually managing? There are two parts, small questions. Managing this data growth. So how you are actually ensuring there are SOPs and planning of the storage also done. And second is the security of this data, whether it in store or whether it in transit. So these two. So if you can actually share your point of view on this.
Yes, security is.
Kabita, this is I asked this question to Mr. Mohidekar.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I'll come back to you. Yes.
Yeah, good morning, everyone, and thanks for giving me the chance, opportunity as a panelist. The thing that whatever data is there, actually there is a lot of data, transactional data, and various types of data is there. So what is the policy that we are archiving the data? So just last 10 years, the data which is older than 10 years old, so we are archiving that data, and we are just taking the data on the tapes, and we are storing it just for audit purposes, or something is there. So that is our policy. And second thing, you're talking about security of the data. So there are various policies in our organization. So there are various initiatives also for data and security. First, main important point is you have to train the workforce. So in our organization, we have in-house training academy. So we are giving the certification courses, CISA, SA, CISSP, and CH to the working professionals in our organization. In-house they are provided, and this one is there. Then we are also certified for ISO 27001:2013, which specifies the requirements for establishing, implementing, maintaining, and continually improving an information security management system within the context of the organization. Then next one is user access with roles and authorizations. So there are various roles are provided and authorizations are provided. So nobody can use nobody can access the whole data. So as per his roles and authorizations, he is accessing the data. We are auditing the users also time to time. So which users are using the data? If they are sitting idle, and so different types of data, sensitive data is not required to access them. So we are reviewing the policies and auditing them time to time. there are various security controls employed in our data centers. There is physical security as well as e-security. So for physical security, security guards are manned everywhere. And for e-security, there are CCTV and whatever latest trends are there. So that is in place. Then we have got the business processes also. For each and every business process, the owners are identified, and these owners are implementing the business processes. They are developing, innovating the processes, business process, and from time to time whenever changes are required. Then in backend, developers are there. So in-house, we have got developers team. They are developing the business processes as per instructions from process owners. Then data backups are taken as per schedule, and replicated copy of the data maintained at different sites. We have got three sites. One is the primary data center. Next one is the near site data center, and another remote site is there at Vadodara. So at a time, the data is replicated at 3 locations. So we are assuring that business continuity at the time of disaster. Then next one is we have got system administrations, antivirus and patch management is there. So whatever the patches are coming, we are not deploying in the production environment. We're first testing in development quality systems, and we're just making it assured that they are working fine. Then only it will be deployed in the production system. Then various authentication, multi-factor authentication, password management, user management, risk management is there. And last one is the obsolete hardware replacement policy. So whatever is the obsolete hardware is there, we're replacing. Just now we have replaced storage, and we have taken the latest trend of the latest state-of-the-art storage from HPE, that is Green Lake, and that is also a pay-per-use policy. Just now we have, upgraded our storage systems. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mohidekar. So let me actually put together 3 different things, because there's a presentation AJ has done, and he's talked about autonomous SAN and the self-healing and the self-optimization stuff. Whereas you're talking about the 3 different co-located data centers, which actually are completely hot. And Kabita ma'am has spoken about the multiple 4 data centers of NIC across the country. So let me actually bundle this thing and ask a same question to all 4 of you. Actually, I'll bring Raghav also now. So in your view, how I'm still trying to figure out the first part of the this thing, how we are managing the data growth. Okay, so and how do we actually plan to keep these, what you call, there you are actually investing in multiple technologies, multiple infrastructure, multiple storage devices. How are you managing those? Because I also heard you that you had the end of life for certain storage products, and then you've taken the Green Lake. But the point is, how do you actually manage these investments which are into different storage boxes? Okay, you can't continue to actually let one storage box go. So I think there has to be something which is a management layer on top of it to manage this entire storage growth. So AJ, I'll come first to you, because you're the R&D, from an R&D and the technology standpoint, if you can actually give that, and then Raghava, I'll come to you from an IBM standpoint, and then we'll go back to Kabita ma'am and Mr. Mohidekar. AJ, all yours.
Yeah, so I think one of the primary things that people need to plan for is the flexibility to be able to drop the next technologies in, because as you heard in both the discussions from the government and from the business side of things, the rate of change that's coming when matched to the growth of the data sets coming, the smart city platforms and so on, the sheer volume of data that's coming into these systems, and the need to keep that data available, whether eventually to archive or just initially for analytics. Then you need the flexibility in that environment to be able to bring in the next generation of technology and readily consume that technology as part of your infrastructure. So matching the generations of server and storage technology, the compute technology, the network technology, and the storage technology, that's the strong role that IT is having to fill today, right? And in those environments, I think one of the challenges that people have is, how do you come across with a uniform view across that from the storage management standpoint? You're looking at the ability as well to then figure out the security of those platforms, encryption of data at rest, as an example, in those same scenarios. So the flexibility of that infrastructure and the ability to rely on standardized interfaces for it, I think are key elements to providing that layer, right? That access layer.
Perfect. Raghav?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Murthy. So, you asked a very good question. I mean, how are organizations, handling this data growth and things like that, right? I mean, once upon a time, right? I mean, we know the traditional applications and how much data it consumes. For example, you take an ERP, or you take a standard CRM, or maybe a co-banking, right? I mean, organizations, people are able to predict the amount of data. But today, the challenge facing, many organizations, be it government or public sector or private, is that they want to use data for competitive advantage, right? And there is a huge plethora of interest in artificial intelligence and analytics, and how do I derive deeper insights into my customers, from this data that I have. And that is one area where we see a huge data growth, right? Number two is, the other significant point to also note is that the changing application landscape, right? Gone are the days when people used to have VMs, traditional virtual machines, or standalone servers where they would deploy the applications, right? Now it is all containerized version. Application is broken into various bits and into containers and then deployed. Number three is that today, when I look at organizations, be it again government or public sector or private, they want to have the ability to move data, right, across locations. Right? They want to have the flexibility of deploying applications on-prem. They want to have the flexibility of deploying applications maybe in a cloud. Maybe they want to have the flexibility to keep moving data. They want that elasticity of storage and data and applications, right? So frankly, what all these things actually throw up tremendous amount of challenges. Each organization have different ways of doing it and tackling it, right? But yes, strongly, being from IBM, frankly per se, that actually also becomes the focus of our organization also, right? To provide technologies which enable this data growth to be as smooth as possible, to be as open as possible, right? And and actually also to do it in a very, very secure fashion, right? Both Mr. Mohidekar and Ms. Kabita also very clearly mentioned. Security is a huge aspect today, right? So I think those are frankly the points of focus today in an organization. Mr. Murthy, back to you.
Yeah. A good point, and I really like the sentence and I wrote it down, using data for competitive advantage. And I think while for private sector it's for competitive, I think it's from the government standpoint, it is more from a service delivery standpoint. So how do I actually use the data and look at the insights to create a better service delivery? At this point, I would like to introduce everyone to Mr. Sundar. B. Sundar has joined us. Thank you, sir. I know you have pressing timelines. Thank you for joining us at this difficult time. So, Mr. Sundar is Special Secretary, Government of AP. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to straight come to a question to you, so I'll take the advantage of you being here. So the first question which I asked Ms. Kabita also, and I asked two questions built into it. One is, what are the IT investments that the state has done in the infrastructure part of it to build the robust data center storage growth, and we know traditionally AP has been in the forefront of deploying many applications and continue to do that. So that means the kind of data you would be having and using that would be much higher. What are your investments in the data center infrastructure and the related storage infrastructure? That's one. And have you actually started looking at how do you actually use the hyper-converged infrastructure? So are you actually looking at a strategy around that also? If you can actually give the broad level and focus on the HCI.
Thank you, GovConnect, for giving me this opportunity to represent our state and talk about our data center policy with respect to citizen services. Basically, I was listening to what Raghava was saying about from the IBM's perspective, and I was just wondering how different the government perspective is, which our moderator also emphasized. Yes, it is. In partial answer to question number one regarding what is the infrastructure we have made, there is a small background which I think I will take up a minute, and then I will answer your questions in 3 minutes, and that I think is what the timeline has been given to us. Basically, we have around 500 to 550 e-government services to the citizens, and that interfaces also a small subset of services to the business community. So in our academic literature, nowhere is defined what a e-government service is, but practice so far in the past 2 decades, both within our state and also the other states of the country, and also the e-government applications of the government of India, like passport and so on and so forth. Broadly, an e-government service is the start point, and the end point is once the citizen puts in the request for a service. It could be for a deliverance of a birth certificate, or a deliverance of a marriage certificate, or a booking slot in one of the primary health centers for some medical condition, and the approval given in the digital form. It could be either a digital certificate or a yes or no kind of an answer through an SMS. So this we define as a e-government service in our government parlance. Like this, we have around 500 to 550 e-government services spanning across the citizens' life cycle. Birth, death, government records, interface with the road transport authorities, interface with the roads and building. For the business community, we have traders who wants to pay taxes, who wants to file GSTs, for minors who want to view royalties to. So it is a whole plethora of services which we are offering online. So to manage this e-service, what we require is a huge data of the citizens about all our nearly, it runs into several millions. Some aspects of this data is what we call the golden data, the Aadhaar number, the birth date, the marriage event. All this is it is taken as a given and not subject to tamper, because one can imagine the mischief that will ensue if the birth date is tampered. Similarly, Aadhaar data. So all this plus a certain amount of data which is fungible, in the sense, suppose a woman gets married, so her residence changes. So this has implications in the issue of the ration card and other social welfare schemes of the government. So once we try to have a e-government service, all these small nuances have to be taken care of. So this directly now leads to the answer to the first question. What is the infrastructure we have made in the data center? That means our data center should be capable of hosting all the citizen services data which the department should pull as and when they require. Basically, the education department, all of them will have, they will want access to a certain subset of the citizens' data on which they will take their decisions for giving the services. So that means a certain amount of data has to be stored where nobody can tamper, and a certain amount of data of the citizen can be stored, which is subject to some changes. So our state is by design and default, it also became a big example for studying these kind of dynamics within the data center policy. Because after bifurcation, we all know that the United AP was bifurcated into the Andhra Pradesh state and Telangana. And in 2015, once the data center partitioned between Hyderabad and Amravati, so we had to take a call on what part of data should be within the state data center in Amravati, what part should be within and this was not a government decision. National Informatics Center was also involved because much of our applications was built by the National Informatics Center. So our investment for the state infrastructure was a solid state data center of Tier 4 category over 9 acres in Amravati for hosting these applications of the citizens. And of course, operations and maintenance, it was done by a third-party vendor. But what we thought, because we also had to take into account certain political sentiments regarding the sanctity of data. So as IBM was pointing out, we wanted it on-prem. A part of the data was on-prem. But now we have a thinking to move a certain amount of data, which may not be that much more critical to governance, into the cloud, which we can retrieve at will, so that it lessens the cost of managing and storing the data set. I hope this covers the questions which the moderator has asked. If there are any more, I would like to gladly add on later. Thank you.
Yeah. So Sundar, I think the part one of the question you have answered, I think in a lot of detail. What I'm actually also looking at is how the state is now looking at very focused, because you cannot continue to invest in the hard infrastructure. So how are you actually managing a software-defined infrastructure management, which is what we call as the HCI, hyperconverged infrastructure? What are your plans? Are you already doing it? If yes, how are you managing the vendor lock-in in the HCI world itself? So that's two sub-questions.
Okay. For the second question, we do not have plans for any hyperconvergence as of now. We are looking at data center from a totally different perspective. We want to make AP a hub for data center business as such. So we have partnered with a vendor for a coastal model, where we are planning to pull the entire data highway through the ocean, from Singapore through the ocean onto one of our coastal cities, and from there we want to give opportunities for other data center players to set shop there. In the sense, our plans for citizens' data is saturated, and we want to give opportunities for other data center players who are in the HCI market to be a partner with us through another vendor. What we are looking at is we want to be a highway for all the other data flows that happens across the Pacific and the Atlantic. So we have a plan for that. We have started things in motion, and hopefully things will fructify. And once it does, I'm quite sure that you will all be able to see whether we are on the right track or not. Thank you.
Perfect. Good input, sir. So I'll come back again to AJ to you. So you heard what Mr. Sundar has shared about the strategy for the citizen data, and that too also divided into confidential and not to be highly secure data, and the transactional data which can be managed, and also the future plans, how it needs to be extended across the state data center to others. What is your perspective? Where can the global best practices can help him in his journey towards managing this entire data? You are on mute.
everybody is facing today, right? When you talk about the citizen data and in particular the data that must be kept and secured and not changed, versus the sheer volume of daily data that's inbound as well. And then through the course of this pandemic, one of the things that's become very clear to us across the globe is that the infrastructure for access to the data is something nobody planned on everybody being remote. And so the scale of it, the volume of data access that's going on across the networks, the speed with which it has to happen, and so on. This is thrown a massive strain. It's accelerated a number of technology challenges that are out there. Our colleagues at IBM talk to cyber resilience pretty frequently around this scenario as well. And so yes, from the sheer bandwidth of the infrastructure that's needed, the remote access for the data, any of the government installations needing to allow citizens to get full access to the data. Some of the government entities that I deal with speak to this concept of dark data that doesn't get touched very frequently, but still has to be kept for extremely long periods of time. And that's where you start to see in some of these technologies, some of the storage technologies, the ability to do inline deduplication, compression, encryption, right? All as part of the hardware. And the point was made earlier on the GPUs, the graphics processing units, and the comment previously used just for gaming, but in fact these are very, very good floating point engines, and so their ability to handle things for both analytics as well as being able to look at machine learning kinds of scenarios or artificial intelligence. These are things that infrastructure is going to need to depend on as well. And I say that because and it's one of the things we try and drive in our developments. The infrastructure needs to get smarter and be able to take care of itself better, because one thing that's become painfully clear across every portion of business and government is that there is very little forgiveness for downtime in any environment, right? And when everything in your life, your finance, your healthcare, your work, your entertainment is coming to you across a network, the network better never fail. The application behind it has to have amazing uptimes as well, because you're depending on this for your business, for your healthcare, your finance. What aspect of your life isn't being touched by this would probably be a shorter question. And so the development of these technologies to be able to in part look after themselves, but then also to help secure that data becomes, I think, a primary focus for a lot of people.
Thanks, Ajay. So I'll come back to you, Ms. Kabita. Just a very quick question. I know you have shared about how the various investments into the IT projects which is happening. So a little bit, I want to go a little bit higher on that. So I don't want to ask a very specific question, but a little bit higher. If I ask you, what are the two IT infrastructure related problems that are still unsolved, which makes you feel, on which you can actually lose your sleep? So let me actually put it in a different way. What are those two things? Okay, so what is that you want to focus on?
Okay, there are challenges. Yeah, there are challenges, but I don't want to lose. Okay, we have challenges in storage and challenges in security. So data center has to give security as well as the storage capacity. So we have for security, this is perimeter level, and this is gateway protection. Then network level, this is firewall protection, and server level, this is vulnerability assessment protection. So which give us the authentication, authorization, and accountability. So there are many things that we are now shifting to, because now we are moving faster from a infrastructure as a service for the data center to a platform as a service or a software as a service to improve our business model for the sustenance of these utilities. This sustainability is a very difficult question for this government infrastructure data centers. This is a government body. We are planning for some app or even data center. We are making infrastructure only and not having any high value business strategy backing it. So fund, resource, and skill are always vital for the sustenance of any project. So this reason is perhaps due to the fact that the government was not in the mandate of doing business before, but now for the sustenance, without proper business plan, it may not work. So in NIC, we are moving in that direction to find suitable action plans for sustenance of utility-based projects. We are now planning to integrate NDC cloud with private sectors cloud like Azure, AWS, and GCP to use them for shares in resource requirement or use them for non-critical or temporal purpose data, etc. And for storage purpose, this is a good question that initially, actually, government organization, this data was the critical part. Now it has shifted, then it has shifted to information, and now it is being shifted to a knowledge. So knowledge is critical, and it comes through the insight of information only. So knowledge management, then expert system, then data analytics, and applied artificial intelligence is now the current focus of our organization. And to manage the growth of data in terms of volume, velocity, and variety, we are augmenting our application with NoSQL-based technology in addition to RDBMS. And we manage this scaling through cloud computing and fully software-defined data center. In NDC Bhubaneswar, we are using both OpenStack and VMware-based cloud, whereas and on micro level, we are using fully Docker containerized platforms over the Kubernetes clusters. And thank you. Actually, I am having a meeting at 12. So may I be released?
Sure. Thank you so much for sharing your inputs and the plans and the progress. Thank you, Mithil.
Thank you.
I'll come to Mr. Mohidekar, yours point of view, and I'll ask a similar question while what's keeping you awake at night. That's a simple question. But I also want to understand, and I'm just taking a cue from where Ms. Kabita left, is on the gradual movement to a SaaS-based infrastructure. What's ONGC's plan on moving towards IaaS or a PaaS or a SaaS platform? Are you looking at that in a structured way or a strategy moving forward on your 3 data centers that you mentioned? And the second is, where are you losing your sleep?
Yeah. Actually, for SaaS-based technology, we are using this. We are upgrading to SAP HANA, which has got in-memory database management system. So for analytics, that SAP HANA, we are using it right now. It is just we are migrating to SAP HANA. It is just in the process. So that SaaS capability can be exploited from the SAP HANA. Thanks.
And the challenges, anything that you think is something which is your next 30, 60, 90 days or the next 3 months of challenges that you want to solve?
And the challenges, the upcoming challenges are there. Right now, that emerging technologies are disruptive and reinventing user experiences, and with increasingly empowered consumers demanding more data-rich personal experiences comes rich opportunities. Therefore, we are facing shortage of competing projects and priorities. Many projects are on hold due to economic uncertainty, which are picking the right areas to advance is very much critical. Actually, there are 3 challenges right now. First one is managing data, that is distributed, diverse, and dark. So data is growing extensively, and today's data management techniques are not able to manage them in the desired way. So we have to embrace data silos as we move away from centralized data strategies. Right now, we are having centralized data storage. This data sprawl is being driven by increasingly distributed data as IoT technologies fuels edge computing. As the number of edge locations generating data grows, centralized data strategies that transfer distributed data to the cloud simply won't be able to keep up with the real-time demands. This growing complexity has implications for regulatory and security compliance. So we rethink and transform data management for the data era by taking on a few key actions like democratizing business data so that teams can easily find and access the high quality production ready data sets. They should even look to provide data engineers and scientists easy access to the tools required to deliver valuable business insights. Next one is the taking innovation to the edge. So right now, edge computing is a key boardroom discussion in current times, and Gartner predicts that by 2022, more than 50% of enterprises' data globally will be created and processed outside the data center or cloud. Going forward, most data will be generated at the edge, and as per studies, 76% businesses in India agreed that they are investing in edge. As data centers gravity rapidly turns towards the edge, organizations are asking IT to deliver more and more this real-time quality of service, fraction of a second functions in decentralized locations. So organizations are recognizing that it is not always practical to transfer distributed data to the central infrastructure in a data center in public cloud or in order to process and analyze the data in timely way. So moving infrastructure closer to the edge locations where the data is being generated is a more strategic approach for this. Therefore, it is very much crucial to note that there is no one size fits all the solutions, and we must need to invest in secure infrastructure edge management platforms that enables the generation and processing of vast amounts of data. Last challenge is empowering people. So we have to reap the full value of business data. Time needs to be applied to data innovation and monetization. Yet most of the business are not able to utilize the data of the resources in extracting the real value of their data. Most of the organizations today are missing the key data roles and skill sets required to set up an intelligent business. Data scientists are highly skilled, specialized, and in demand. Hence, there are expensive resources. This makes their time even more precious, and we must ensure that data scientists' time is spent on specialized tasks that bring more value to the organizations. So times have changed. We have organizational strategies has to be changed. With the right infrastructure, data management strategy, and people in place, any business today can thrive in the data era to uncover and capitalize on the true value of the data and meet the rising demand of their customers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mohidekar. AJ, I'll come to you. I know you are in US and it must be pretty late for you. AI, so I'm just picking from where Mr. Mohidekar left. The emerging tech, the AI is the backbone for almost every single product and solution. And I saw your presentation talks about the autonomous SAN part of it. So I believe that you're building AI into the system to actually create the self-healing, the self-optimization. Can you a little bit talk about that and connect that back with how NIC and the ONGC as well as the AP government can use that?
Yeah, sure. So the point is very valid that AI is going to touch almost everything that you can think of, and that's true for us in the infrastructure space as well. Yes, vast volumes of data are being generated on the edge quite clearly, but then the part of the challenge is sharing that data back with applications and business units that can monetize it, right? And you don't know where that's going to end up. So when you start looking at that in terms of then applying that headset to the infrastructure itself, the point being made that the resources, the people involved are not as available as we might like, just based on the scale of everything that's going on. The autonomous SAN concept is that the infrastructure itself needs to learn about what the traffic patterns are. It needs to learn about what the environment is that's being supported there. And so we're automatically learning the flows, right, between the application and its data across the environment. In point of fact, we are moving into the ability to do that all the way down to we have recently started making available the ability to see that all the way down to virtual machines. So the self-learning piece of this is one part of it. But one of the other challenges that virtually every data center has is you don't get to just throw everything away every 2 years and start clean all over again, right? And then you have the same problem with the application base as it migrates through age. And so there are customers in India that I've spent time with, and not just in everywhere. Everybody runs into this, where they've got applications running that are, running on operating system images that are 10, 12, 15 years old, and until a replacement for that application comes up, it's still critical. It still needs to be maintained. It's, somebody's business is running on it, and you want it to run the best that it can, but you don't want it to get in the way of the newer platforms either, right? And so, I joke with people sometimes that, it's as you can probably tell from the gray hair, Dutta G does not drive as fast as everybody else out on the road, right? So how do you match the performance of these platforms? And that's the optimization piece of this. And so we built basically the ability to look at what the edge device is, what it can consume, how fast it can consume, and to basically split traffic in our networks, so that platforms that are of like performance end up in the same traffic pattern, right? And it's based on how fast can the edge device consume, right? So if you have children or grandchildren, right? If you're feeding juice to a toddler, you don't tip the glass faster than the toddler can do. It's going to make a mess that somebody's going to clean up, and so. That's the self-optimizing part of that, the ability to see that, but then also the network has to be smart enough to be able to see when there are issues, to immediately begin to mitigate, those issues. So, if you end up with the slow grain device problem kind of scenario, to not drop the traffic, because I have yet to meet a customer that said it was okay to drop data, never once, no matter what the situation is, but to be able to isolate it so that it can continue to run the best that it can, but still allow the rest of the technology to continue moving forward at the pace that it can manage. And so the self-healing side of this, the ability to recognize, say, when a particular link in an infrastructure is sick but not dead. And this, so for path failovers and so on, this becomes a very critical kind of scenario. Because again, if we wait for me to notice an alarm on my system, and then I go begin to look at fixing what the problem is, there's going to be multiple application impacts, right? And the response time for humans to do this is just not going to be enough. Think of it, if you think about the autonomous vehicles, the self-driving cars, one of the reasons why we have, say, for example, adaptive radar cruise control in the vehicles now, is because the system can recognize faster than the human that the car in front is stopped and begin to apply the brakes before the human can react. Well, not surprisingly, the same thing exists in infrastructure. The human is not going to be fast enough to react, and that's one of the rationales behind the autonomous SAN, not to replace the humans, right? But to augment. And I think you're going to see more and more of that, whether self-driving cars or pick some other topic. But autonomy and artificial intelligence is going to be a bigger and bigger item.
Well, very, very interesting, and I completely agree with you how the autonomous behavior of the infrastructure can help a lot of optimization, self-healing part of it. So, and it's not about augmenting the human, resources, but it's about actually empowering them much more and helping them focus on the right problem and the right problem area actually. So we are actually coming to the end. We are all almost exceeded our time limit, but I just have one last question to Mr. Sundar, to you. So I'm just taking the point from what AJ has said. How can we actually build AI-driven systems? Okay, so or let's say very specifically the autonomous SAN he's talked about. How do we actually build the intelligence into the storage? Do you think your current data center of the future has what you call, is there a relevance to that? So do you think that building the intelligence layer on top of this storage will help you do a better data management? Because you never know where the problem is. How can even the command center team can actually, or infrastructure team cannot find out the right problem in the right time? So does that make any important input into your strategy?
Thanks, Mohidekar, for giving me this opportunity. Yes, in partial answer to your question, we did find some applications of artificial intelligence in managing our cybersecurity operations center in the state. What we did was we created a AP SOX, or the AP Cybersecurity Operations Center, solely dedicated to the task of periodically checking all the government-hosted websites, their flow of data, any attacks, any vulnerabilities, and report to the concerned department through the IT department in a timely manner. And once the reporting was done, it is up to the IT teams within the various specific departments to take suitable corrective action. And as you can well imagine, we have around 37 departments, around 400 HODs. That means roughly around 500 to 600 websites and mobile apps to track on an almost regular basis. So for this, we had used the IBM Watson tool, the AI tool, for sifting patterns and noting down exceptions. And in its checkered history of something about 2 years, Watson had helped us in getting around 67 instances for all the departments, and 4 notable cases which helped the police department to track with reference to their criminal investigation. So there are certain other applications also which AI was used. Not AI, it was an Internet of Things based device, and transmitting that intelligence to the fisheries sector. Basically, you place a device in a small fish pond and regulate its BOD, or the biological oxygen demand. And when there are variations, an SMS is triggered to the farmer and the department. This was also a very simple application based on a IoT device, but where we used an ML process was in accumulating the data and then coming out with a prediction for the next season. This happened around 1.5 years back, and the results had partial success. If you want me to use a very precise metric ratio, the precision, which is one of the metrics for a ML algorithm to run, it was between 70 to 73%. So that was the success rate we had. And you can also assess the advantages of Watson in our cybersecurity operations. But they were useful. And we still have not completely explored the use of AI and ML in many of our governance applications, mainly because we do not have the expertise within ourselves. There are very few scattered technocrats, very few scattered people who really are able to put this and understand how to use it in e-government. So wherever we had the opportunity, we have been doing it. Thank you. I hope it answers the question.
Yes, thank you, Sundar Garu. And I thank you for thank you everyone. I know data infrastructure and how do you manage that is extremely important today. And the inputs that AJ has shared on how technology is evolving, and there are new set of technologies which can help manage this. And I also heard from both Mr. Mohidekar and Mr. Sundar, as well as Kabita ma'am, that there is an interest and intent to actually adapt these solutions. I think probably offline you can all connect with each other, but the agenda of the panel was to actually understand the challenges, look at those solutions, look at how we can actually do it. I also thanks Raghav for your inputs. Thank you everyone for your participation, and good night to you, AJ. It's too late at night, or I'll say early good morning to you, and for everyone, good day. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.